Social Freedoms by Nick Lupo, Asher Wheeler, Luke Pliska, and Evan Wayno.
Today, in the United States, citizens have the basic rights. One basic right many Americans believe to be the most important is the freedom of speech and press. This means that all U.S. citizens are protected under the First Amendment with the right to speak without censorship. Under the First Amendment, this means people can express their opinions publicly without government interference. In the Philippines, their president, Rodrigo Duterte, was elected into office in 2016. He enjoys going after independent media outlets. This results in an uncomfortableness in the country's journalists who practice free speech. Recently, according to the EFC, the Duterte administration Security and Exchange Commission revoked the administration of the independent news organization Rappler, a vocal critic of the president's administration. Supposedly, the company violated the foreign equity restriction. This is a prime example of restricting freedom of speech and press because Rappler, and the independent news organization in the Philippines, has rights to publicly criticize the government, but the president terminates their entire company over their criticism towards him.
Freedom of conscience and religion includes the right to put your beliefs in action, such as wearing religious clothing, talk about your beliefs, and take part in worship. Also protects those who participate in non-religious beliefs. This amendment is only in action when there's public safety, public order, health, or morals, and the right and freedoms of other people, according to equalityhumanrights.com. Many families now live in tents on the outskirts of town. One man describes how life has changed in his hometown. He now sees no kids in the streets playing, only rubble and torn apart homes. The streets are lined with tires and barrels full of tar, what ISIS uses to set things on fire. He says no one knows if teenagers kicking around a soccer ball one minute will blow themselves up the next. He also says that it will take a long time to rebuild the economy in his town because the businesses have been destroyed.
Freedom of association and assembly. Alongside with the freedom of speech and press, Americans have the right and ability to join and collectively come together to express their ideas. Citizens of the United States recognize their freedom as a civil liberty and basic right. This means under the First Amendment, United States citizens have the right to protest and form marches against any government decision, etc., according to Equality and Human Rights Commission. At the African Commission Conference, a section of it was dedicated to responding to the freedoms of association and assembly rights. Lately, people have started to protest in Africa and began marches. Often, as well, police and other forces responded in undermining the basic rights of the peaceful protesters. In most cases, each event led to violences.
There are many countries that give the right to petition their government, but there are still many that don't allow that. This is the right to stand up against the government and protest against the injustices in our society and stand up to social change, according to learningtogive.org. Woman fights City Hall over right to petition. People petition the government over fire hazards, but are pushed back against by the government. There have been many other petitions against the U.S. government, both inside and outside the U.S. Many governments don't know how far to take their pushbacks against these petitions, and some go too far.
The right to fair trial and due process is important because when people are convicted, they're stripped of an important right and liberty. This involves separating the guilty and the innocent while protecting against injustices. The process a person goes through must also be fair and fast.
The Somalian government justified the unfair trials, so there is no one to fix the problem. They also try civilians in the military court, which is prohibited by the African and international human rights standard. One man said, "The military tribunal guys have absolute power. They don't respect the human people."
The right to privacy featured Amazon, Alexa, and Hey Google. Our rights to privacy are a firewall that protect us from both the government and private companies. The right to privacy is a two-way street as well. If our privacy falls in the wrong hands or is breached by the government or a private company, it has potential to ruin a person's life and cause many other problems. In our lives, we have both physical and many other informational borders that full our lives, and our lives are full of borders. One of the most fundamental parts of our freedom is the ability to exercise our right to privacy. The right to privacy allows us to think freely and express our thoughts without the fear of being oppressed. A story of an example of when this was breached was in the Amazon Echo and Alexa infringing on privacy. The U.S. government infringing on these rights by demanding tech-based evidence collected by a third-party source. A recent murder case involving an Arkansas man accused of killing his friend after a night of drinking and watching football during the party, witnesses recall seeing and hearing an Amazon Echo smart home device. Police contend that with Amazon's smart home technology like Echo, these devices are listening to you and recording this information as data that is stored in Amazon's data centers. Police demand that the recordings from this murder suspect's home will be turned over as evidence. Amazon refused, citing First Amendment privacy ramifications were at stake. The judge dropped. However, eventually the suspect agreed to allow the prosecutors access to the information recorded by the Amazon Echo. The judge dropped the murder charges, in this case citing there was too much reasonable doubt to convict the suspect of murder. So this brings us to an interesting question, not only about law enforcement's desire to our private information. Why is Amazon letting us listen to it? Listening to us, recording, collecting, and sending this information to their data centers for analysis. In this case, based on our unending appetite for new technology that makes our lives more efficient and our unwavering belief in our First and Fourth Amendment rights as American citizens, we simply want to have our cake and eat it to it. We continue down this path whereby companies like Amazon blur the borders of privacy, and law enforcement uses this as another way to collect private data against its citizens. This could result in constitutional crisis.